got out of prison, I said I was going to conclude the radical agenda, and I, sort of decided not to do that for a number of reasons. But it's not working business wise. Like it's definitely not working. So I'm going to try a couple of different things. We'll see what happens. But we're going to have to. Something's going to have to change around here.
This is I Don't Speak German. Here we talk about the far right, their fellow travellers, and what they say to each other when they think we're not listening. The show is hosted by Daniel Harper and me, Jack Graham. We're both he, him. Be aware, we cover difficult, sometimes nasty subject matter, so content warnings always apply. Okay, wow, yes, back for another episode, 125, episode 125 of I Don't Speak German. And guess what we're talking about, people? You already know because you already saw the title, because that's how reality works. We're talking about Christopher Cantwell. It's an entire episode of Cantwell news, listeners. Isn't that great? And yeah, I'm here with Daniel Harper. Daniel Harper, say things to us, please.
I'm here. I am very much here and ready to talk about the crying Nazi, our favorite topic and really favorite human being. I would say that's just true, right?
Oh yeah.
I can't believe anyone would tune into this episode first, not knowing who Chris Cantwell is. Like, it is, but I'm sure there's one. Like, if you showed up here and are like, who is this Cantwell figure? Why are you talking about the TV writer? We're not talking about the TV writer. We're talking about the very famous Nazi who, anyway, he's been all over this podcast, believe me. I don't think we need to summarize who Chris Cantwell is again.
Yeah, if anybody's tuning in and you don't know who Chris Cantwell is, maybe... I was going to say, do some research, look into it, listen to our back catalogue, but I feel like you'll pick it up from this episode. Really, I feel like you'll get everything that you need to know from this episode. So Chris Cantwell is on Grindr, according to the title. Daniel gave me I said before we started recording, Daniel, fill me in roughly, what is this one about? And he's sort of listing, Chris Cantwell this and Chris Cantwell's doing that, and I'm just sat here like, what? And so that's the show we've got. But before we get into it, I think just a couple of little notes. We won't take long over this. Firstly, it's possible, listeners, that if you follow us, on social media or our Patreons or whatever, you might have heard from either or one or both of us that we're going to be doing an episode on Benjamin Boyce. That's off because, frankly, he's just too boring. He's just too completely uninteresting. So we're not going to be doing that.
I was trying to tell a friend, like a friend of the show. I was trying to tell someone about Boyce. I'm like, oh, that's going to be the next episode. And she was like, oh, well, who is that? And she's like, okay, she's interested. Like, she's a fan of the show. Like, we met through the podcast, all right, I was like, oh, well, Benjamin Boyce, he's like such and such. And like, I was kind of tired. I wasn't like in the brain space to really like explain it. But then like, as I started even telling her like the 2-minute version, I realized I have zero interest in actually talking about this person for an hour, unless he goes and does something much more dramatic, or he is a much bigger personality. Because I started telling this person about the reach, and it's like, well, he doesn't even have that much reach anymore. This is pointless. Like, I was going into that one out of pure spite because I'm just tired of him. Like, he's just very annoying. He's a very annoying little mosquito to me personally. Just that he exists, and just that he's on YouTube and doing the terrible things he's doing. But there was a way into it. I had like an outline, and it was just like, oh, and now I got to go pull clips, and I got to do this, and I have to like, and it's just every time I sat down to do it, I was just like, or I could watch paint dry. So like, it's one of those things where like writers have that thing, is like you start you go through and you find more and more things to do to like facilitate your writing process until you never write. I think one of them is like, well, you can't write until you have a clean chair, and you can't have the clean chair until You like, vacuum the cat hair off the chair, right? And then like, oh, but the cat's just gonna shed, and so like the shedding is just gonna add more. So then you have to go and like groom the cat. But then how about you vacuum the cat? So vacuuming the cat is always the metaphor that I use for finding any excuse not to actually do the real work that you're supposed to be doing, particularly in creative endeavors. I don't know if you've ever heard that metaphor before, but surely.
No, I'm hearing you as a writer myself in a non-professional way. I can't pretend to have made it my career, but as a writer in a non-professional way, yeah. When you something's supposed to be writing and you just don't want to do it, it suddenly becomes incredibly important that you sort your coat hangers or something like that. Which is a good metaphor, because listening to Benjamin Boyce, or even listening to somebody talk about Benjamin Boyce, being, well, sorting your coat hangers would be preferable. Being whipped with coat hangers would be preferable. So this is the thing. He's so irritating, and yet the boredom factor even outweighed that. So we're not going to be talking about Benjamin Boyce.
Maybe in the future. I mean, I'm not putting it past us. Maybe I'll find the energy to do it. I mean,
if we get desperate.
I could make a decent episode out of it. Don't worry. Like, if it ever comes up in your feed, it's because I found something really good, but until then, we're just gonna move past it, because it's just not worth it. So
yes. The other thing was, I just wanted to sort of check in on the previous thing that we released on the feed, which is the public bonus, the conversation between you and Ina about Gaza. Nothing really to say about that, except that I'm glad we put that out. And although I couldn't be there because real world private stuff, I was fully there in spirit. I co-sign the essential points of what was said in that episode. So please don't anybody interpret my absence from that as meaning anything other than the fact that I just couldn't make it that day. Okay, so.
Yeah, and just to highlight, that is that, I think I got some pushback in the sense of people thought like, oh, I was there under duress, or that it was like I was being taken to task or whatever. And it's like, no, Ian and I had the three of us actually had this conversation privately, and just thought like, well, if people are coming out and asking about it, we should just put out a brief episode kind of discussing the issue. And so like, it was, the three of us are all friends. This is not in any way, this should not be taken as a negative in any sense towards anybody. I feel very happy to have had that conversation, and to have made my feelings clear on the obviously the atrocities that are happening in Gaza right now. So
absolutely. So moving on from that to the main subject of the episode, which is, as you will have seen in the title and heard in the cold open, it's about Chris Cantwell. So Daniel, Chris Cantwell, he's wrapping up the radical agenda, and he's been experimenting with new forms of content, you tell me, which somehow includes Grindr. And no doubt all manner of other wondrous things with which we will regale your eardrums, listeners. So, Daniel, tell us, please, about Christopher Cantwell. What's he up to? That little scamp.
That little scamp.
That little tyke.
Cantwell, again, I keep every time
by scamp and tyke, I of course mean absolutely egregious, contemptible Nazi swine.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I don't. Again, every time we sit down and talk about, every time, like, I always think like this could be somebody's first episode, and you want to like start from the beginning. But there's so much of a history with Cantwell. He's the eternal fuck up of fuck ups in the Nazi community. Like, he is the one guy who just cannot get his shit together to save his life. And
yet there is so much shit for him to get together.
There is so much shit for him to get together, right? He's just completely obnoxious. Anyway, he got out of prison because he committed some felonies. He got out of prison at the end of 2022, yes. Which we have discussed in detail on previous episodes. So he gets out of prison. He immediately starts up this project, the Surreal Politiques kind of network, in which his regular show...
Can I just break in to say, lest anybody should accuse us of not being fair, right? Mm-hmm. Surreal Politique, that's quite a good podcast title. I will give him that much. I like that title. That's as much as I'll give him, but I will give him that.
it's a realpolitik in a surreal world. That is his tagline, which he has to explain regularly because literally nobody gets it. So
I get it.
well,
I get it, and it's good.
yeah, all right.
It's
There are
probably the only good thing he's ever done, but it is good.
it is pretty good, yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. But it is the sort of thing. So he starts up this network, which he's trying to get like multiple people to kind of join that network and be like the basically do affiliate links and affiliate programs, sort of deal. To date, the only other podcast which has joined in on him is the Full House podcast, and they have produced all of 2 bits of bonus material that they are paying that are available behind behind that paywall system. So he's doing great. He's doing
House,
great.
Haus, as we know.
Yes, yes. And this is a podcast we have talked about too. A little bit we've mentioned on the show before. I think there will be a Full House episode. That one would actually be interesting, I think. So I think, and I've been wanting to do it for a while, and I keep holding off on it because there's other stuff. But Full House would be fairly easy to do, and they've got enough content that it's you could easily find some little interesting bibs and bobs to go through, and there's a kind of a long history there. So we will do Full House, but they're the only people who are currently working directly with Chris Cantwell in his affiliate program, and so. And he hasn't had a real job, like an actual 9 to 5 or like paid employment job, other than being a professional podcaster since 2015, I think. Um, in the beginning, Radical Agenda, even before it was Radical Agenda, it used to be called Some Garbage Podcast. But in the beginning, Radical Agenda was a YouTube show, and it was a call-in show. So the format, I don't think we've ever really gone through the format here, despite the fact that I've listened to like literally hundreds of episodes, is that he will open with a monologue, like a pre-written monologue. Is usually about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. And then move into like reading news, and in between he takes calls. He takes calls from an 800 number or from Skype. He used to do it on Skype, or he's doing it on Discord. But anyway, he's taking calls. But in order to do that, you have to have a kind of a large passive audience, of which some percentage of those people will call in. In 2017, when he was blocked out of, when he was deplatformed from YouTube and every other major media platform, and financial service because of the shit he pulled in 2017, he since then that show has been going down the drain, certainly financially. He simply cannot get new callers in, and so he ends up either talking to the same handful of people over and over again, or he just ends up reading news for 2 hours, and that is very, very dull. It's very boring. It's interminable. So let's listen to Chris kind of tell this. Like, I've given you the summary, but let's listen to Chris's version.
I'll just say it. We're nearing the conclusion of Radical Agenda Stage 6, ladies and gentlemen. There are no plans for Stage 7. This is not to say that you will have heard the last from me anytime soon. Surreal Politics will continue. I will produce uncensored content in some other fashion separately from that branding. Some of that will be members-only content available to those with Surreal Politics memberships. In truth, the Radical Agenda ended a long time ago. The show has not been the same since the events of 2017, and I have long struggled with the apprehension that I might be ruining this body of work by straying too far from the original body of work that I was so proud of. Being deprived of business services and promotional means, the trajectory of listenership and financial support has steadily declined. More importantly, this has had the effect of turning the phone lines into a ghost town, which is why I'm not even bothering to pay for them tonight. Having been typecasted as edgy politics, we've been relegated to an echo chamber wherein ideas stagnate and grow stale. In my view, it is boring, and it seems a lot of people agree.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people agree. Yeah,
a lot of people agree. Not just the Nazis.
I was listening to that. I was trying to think what it reminded me of, and it reminded me powerfully of Bill O'Reilly. I was like, any minute now he's going to introduce Dennis Miller. Hey Miller, what do you make of these college kids saying now that sexual harassment is something wrong with it? What do you reckon about that, Miller?
I mean, you're not at all wrong. I mean, Cantwell models himself after that kind of particular right wing radio news personality. He considers himself like in the caliber of a Rush Limbaugh or a, Bill O'Reilly, or, he thinks if he hadn't gone down the rabbit hole, or if he had, been able to, in one way or another, maintain his like access to YouTube, for instance, he thinks he would be a millionaire like multiple times over by now. Like he would be just like drowning in money and respect and acclaim because he's just that fucking talented. I can assure you that is not true, because I have listened to a great deal of his content, and today you're going to get to listen to like what he thinks an entertaining radio program is. Now that he doesn't have access to callers that he can abuse and spew fascist libertarian talking points to. The first thing he tried to do before Grindr, and this was kind of end of last year.
Cantwell BG before Grindr.
Before Grindr, yep, BG, yep. The first thing he tried to do in really starting in like December of last year and kind of going up until, for a few months, he did this a bit in between his regular production. So he does a Surreal Politiques on Monday, he does a Radical Agenda on Friday, and then a members only show on Wednesday. And you have to like be behind the paywall to get that, or have somebody send it to you. Gee, imagine how I get it. But in his kind of off hours, he starts like kind of experimenting with, well, how can I get to talk to new people? How can I get, and he discovers, oh, people play video games on the internet. People play video games on Twitch and Kick, etc.
I've heard that.
So he discovers it in like 2023. He's like, oh, well, maybe we try this. And here's just a bit. Here's just a bit of that. All right.
And I had a pretty good time doing it, me and my friends, but my girlfriend hated watching us.
He's talking about playing video games a bunch when he was a teenager, by the way. They used to play like Mortal Kombat and shit.
Do this. Like, she's like, what are you doing? Like, can you like come fuck me or take me somewhere? And I'm like, no. Like, I had to smoke marijuana and play video games with my friends. Like, if I get an erection during the course of that, yeah, I'll screw you. But Jesus Christ, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Where did she need to be taken, Chris? The elementary school?
And eventually she was like, I'm hot.
He is a libertarian, after all.
I can do other things, and so she left me or whatever. So that was basically my experience of people watching other people play video games. I'm like, why the fuck would anybody do that? But apparently people do, because like when I got out of prison, we'll get to that later. But like I got out of prison, I went to prison for a while. When I got out of prison, I was banned from YouTube and all this stuff because I'm funny and I'm smart, and the government doesn't like me. And those companies are run by criminals, so they do these things. They hide evidence, is what they do. And so I had to find like other ways to stream my shows. And I found like I was looking at other video streaming platforms. One of them being Kick.com. It's nice to meet you guys, by the way. And so we started streaming to Kick.com just the other day, and it's just one of those platforms that are like geared toward gaming. Like people are watching other people play video games. I'm like, what are you fucking crazy? Like, why would anybody watch other people play video games? Say this PlayStation 4 that like I bought it a long time ago, basically. So like I bought it for my girlfriend or whatever, and I didn't really play it at all. But I was like, maybe if I could make money at this, then I'll do it. Do anything for money. Not really, I'm kidding. But it's not really for the money, it's for the attention. I'm that starved for friends. And so I'm kidding about that part.
I think this is like unironically about the most honest he's ever been on a microphone since the days in which he was strung out on methamphetamine. Honestly, it's that's just amazing. So that was him streaming to Kick. He was actively playing Grand Theft Auto 5 at that point, and that's sort of his like intro. That's sort of like the way he's like kind of introing himself to the streaming audience is like, oh, I'm just this guy. I went to prison for a while. I've been into radio, and I want to play video games because this is where the kids are. And then he's pretty incompetent at GTA 5, and even more incompetent at GTA 5 while trying to have conversations with the people who showed up in his Discord chat to talk to him. And so a whole lot of him playing was fumbling with the controls, failing to complete any kind of mission with any kind of fidelity, while getting distracted talking to people about abstract political or semi-abstract political theories and why the Jews are bad. It's for pretty unwatchable, pretty unlistenable. I am not someone who generally like sits and watches people play video games. I don't like follow like Twitch streams. I mean, there are some games. I mean, sometimes I like, you know, watching some of that kind of stuff for a little bit, but like I'm not sitting and watching people like I'm not a Destiny fan or any streamer like that. It's just not my style of content. But his was particularly unwatchable even by those standards. And he tried that for a little bit, here and there over the course of a few months. He did maybe one or two a week, and I think he just kind of realized it's not his medium. He just couldn't do it. He tried playing some of the fighting games, but then the fighting games don't really have the interactive component that allows him to kind of talk about other things in the same way. Also, he's 42 or 43 years old. He doesn't have the reflexes of a teenager, and the people who are watching these things, they want to see like really good gameplay. Like that's part of the joy of it, is watching someone like play the game very well while having a conversation. And Cantwell's just not that person. He was never going to be that person. But yeah, so
it just boils down again to the fact that he's Chris Cantwell.
Right. He's just Chris Cantwell, and he just can't.
He just is.
He is irreducibly Chris Cantwell. And so yeah, that's what it does. Is it introduces the theme that we're going to come back to again and again, is that he has to hide in plain sight. He can't say, hey, I'm the crying Nazi. I was in Charlottesville. I did all these things. I did crime because I threatened some other Nazis. He can't say that. He can't come out and be that personality. He has to just be like, well, I'm a radio guy. I'm an independent radio host. I'm a famous guy. I'm really talented. Come and talk to me about things. And he's trying to push these racial politics and these far right politics, these, Nazi politics into these spaces, not even knowing the format. Like there are tons of people who are like Nazi adjacent who are huge on these platforms. They just don't come right out and say it's all because of the Jews. There's tons and tons of that stuff. It's rife within these spaces. And this was just never ever going to work out for him. He discovered it was a thing and decided like he was going to throw himself into it, and utterly failed. And I think that's lovely. I think that's lovely.
That is very nice. Yeah, it must be. Thinking about it, it must actually be really frustrating for him, because when you're trying to promote yourself and grow your online presence and your name recognition and your brand and your content and all that stuff, getting recognition, that's a very important part of it. And he has a phrase, he has a name that would get him instant recognition, but he can't use it. All he has to do is say, I'm the crying Nazi, but that fucks him up, doesn't it?
Well, and it gets, he would say, I mean, his argument here is that it fucks him up because anything that's associated with that the second the platforms realize he's the one using it, they're going to kick him off, not because of anything he's done on the platform, but because, oh, you're the crying Nazi, therefore you can't be here, right? And so he's absolutely terrified of running into that situation, and yet he wants to produce this sort of his kind of content. He wants to do that. He wants to make money doing that. And so he has to find his way to insert himself, to infiltrate these platforms under sort of a different guise, and that's the whole thing. That's the whole surreal politics model. Back in the day, that was Outlaw Conservative when he was trying that project out. That was the whole model, was we're going to do a different radio program that can get mainstream eyes on it, at least hypothetically. But then, he can't make that work because he's A, not very good at it, and B, he's in a very large space of people who are doing exactly that, and his content doesn't stand out unless you know it's the crying Nazi. But the second you know it's the crying Nazi, the people who know that want him to push the actual hardcore racialist stuff instead of the Fox News politics type.
Oh, yeah, sure, but also the minute he's the crying Nazi, he's the crying Nazi. And right. Who wants to be the crying? It's like the old joke, isn't it? I spend my entire life building fences. I fuck one sheep. Do they call me Chris the fence builder?
No, they do not. They call you Chris the sheep fucker. I agree. And this is a man. I mean, to my knowledge, he's never fucked a sheep, but he has metaphorically fucked quite a few sheep. I mean, people think I talk a lot about Chris Cantwell. I could do an episode every week about Chris Cantwell. Like there is that much history. This could be a knowledge fight, but for Chris Cantwell, we could go into the archives and talk Chris Cantwell. There, that could be a future if I would not like, you know.
It's the red hot Benjamin Boyce material fails us.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that failed.
What a surprise.
Are you familiar with a I don't know, I probably mentioned his name. I mean, I know we've kind of talked about him a little bit behind the scenes, but I don't know if you know this person. Handsome Truth, aka John Mindanao.
It rings a bell. I know
Sure.
I've heard it.
Yeah, I'm sure I've mentioned him a time or two on the
Yeah.
show. I'm sure we've never done a full episode on him. I mean, he would be one that would be worth doing a full episode on for sure. But he is sort of the head guy behind Goyam TV. He was kind of deeply invested in the I don't want to say the terrorgram stuff because I don't think he ever got quite that hardcore, but he was definitely kind of hanging out with a lot of those guys back in that day, and did a lot of live streams in that kind of vein. And his big thing, one of the things that he got big doing was going on to the kind of God, what is it, like chat roulette type video program. This is so basically it's Omegle was the old one. And the idea with Omegle was, you sit down, you've got a webcam on, you've got a microphone, and the system just pairs you up with someone random, speaking your language, and you're just like talking to whoever. And then you can just change as many times as you want. And it's meant to be, I mean, it's I don't know. It's a very, I have never spent any time on it. It seems completely obnoxious to me, but people seem to enjoy it. It's a
I was
lot
going to
of
say,
like,
it sounds like hell on earth.
it's a lot of stoned teenagers and such sitting around and throwing slurs at each other. Um, and I assume that like there's some healthy stuff that goes on occasionally. I mean,
Internet.
people do it. It's the internet. It's people shit posting on the internet. It's people doing nonsense. Well, Handsome Truth, one of the ways he got famous was that he started doing basically pushing Nazi propaganda to these teenagers, to these bored drunk teenagers, using Omegle and coming in and doing like the 14 words and doing all the talking points and everything for that audience, and then broadcasting it live to his Twitch stream, and then like saving them and putting them on his website, GoMTV. His style of content was considered absolutely hilarious by Cantwell once he kind of found out about it and once he got out of prison. And so he decides to do some of this for himself. If he can't, get people to call into his radio program, he's going to go out there and harass people where they live. And so Omegle no longer exists because it was committing some crimes, but there's a competing service, Omi TV, and Chris put out a couple of episodes where he went on to Omi TV and talked to people. And again, it's the first episode. He fucked up the audio. The audio is literally unlistenable. There's so much echo in it. You can't tell what anybody is saying except for Chris. And I was gonna like play 30 seconds of that, but I couldn't even find 30 seconds that was like comprehensible enough to even make sense of it. Honestly, like you'd have to listen to a few minutes of it to even understand what's going on. And so we're not going to do that, but I will play a couple of calls just to give you a sense of what Chris is doing. Again, this is what Chris is doing, what he considers to be like top tier content.
Hey, bro.
What's up, man? What are you doing?
What's up, bro? Hey, I just seen a 15-year-old on here with a kid, bro.
You're seeing a 15-year-old on here with a kid?
Yep.
That's unsurprising. It's probably black, right?
Nah, it was a white girl.
God fucking damn it, they're ruining us. You know that. Hello.
Yeah, we can get banned. We can get banned. For someone we can get banned. What's up, Christopher?
What's going on, man?
Are you looking for the big booty girls too?
I'm just looking for conversation, man. I don't care if it's girls or guys, and I'm not trying to fucking get laid on here. I have better ways of doing that, frankly.
Wait,
Damn.
how you been caught? Wait, what did he say?
He's been laying like he weekend. Fucking.
Alright, I didn't need to know that, but alright, you have a very shiny head.
Yeah, so it happens. You take a razor to it, it works miracles.
Alright,
That's nice.
you have a very shiny head.
Yeah, man. That'll
You're
happen.
welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome.
When you get older, you see how that works out for you. You keep on making fun of fucking bald people. You grow up, see how that fucking works out for you, buddy.
Alright,
Unless
then
you have
peace
like
out,
low testosterone, which I think is probably the case. In which case, you'll be fine. You'll keep your hair until forever, like a fucking woman.
I have listened to multiple hours of Cantwell doing this, by the way. He went on a long tangent in which he starts because everyone who was talking to was smoking weed, and he believes that weed is the absolute worst drug because with like heroin or like a hallucinogen, you take the drug, it gets in your system, you get fucked up, it gets out of your system, and then you go about your day, and you can't be on heroin 24/7. Whereas with weed, he thinks like that just makes you a pothead and you are just unable to like function rationally because you are just fucked up on this drug 24/7. Now, I know people who do, use marijuana responsibly, in the evenings to maintain perfectly fine careers. I know people who have chronic pain who use it all day, who you use it for the body hive, for pain relief. Using marijuana does not mean you cannot be a functioning member of society. It does not mean you can't make proper decisions for yourself and the people around you. So he goes on this rant over and over and over again to just whoever comes up and comes up in his chat roulette feature. Again, this I can't even describe to you how mind numbing this is. It's just most people don't give him any more than 10 or 15 seconds, honestly. Like that, those two calls I played for you are like typical, very typical.
Yeah, I was going to say my mind is numb just from what you played me. So
right, yeah. It does help to play it at high speed. It does move a little bit faster that way, or while you're doing other things when you're not trying to like focus on it 100%. But I mean, this is like bottom of the content barrel. I mean, this is just shit, right?
Yeah,
and I think he's aware of that. He knows that. He knows he's not as quote unquote good as John Mendeo at producing quote unquote entertaining content this way. And so he moved to another medium. How familiar are you with the app Grindr?
well, I know what it is,
Okay.
but it's not aimed at me. Let's put it that way.
Sure, fair enough. Also, I have, I've never had the need, whatever I'm feeling, I've never had the need to pull up a kind of random hookup app. Regardless, I managed to get those needs met in other ways. I wouldn't blame anybody for
There are
using
better
the
ways
app.
of getting laid. Wah.
Well, I'm not even going to say there are better ways. I'm saying like if it works for you, if that's what you're looking for, then that's great. I would never judge someone for using an app that way. I know people personally who've used it. It's perfectly fine. But it is marketed towards gay men who want a quick hookup, and it is designed around it's like GPS based. And so it is like finding the guy who's interested in being with you, within a mile, within the closest possible, so you can just like it's and it does have a very seedy reputation, and I'm assuming that's why Cantwell showed up for it, why he got interested in like trying to, because I think his initial goal was I'm going to get on there, I'm going to try to get people to call me. One of the vagaries here, one of the reasons, because he used to do some like prank calling and stuff, like he would call around to places, and but he can't do that from the state of New Hampshire where he lives, because New Hampshire is a one-party consent state, or pardon me, it's a two-party consent state. Both parties on a call have to consent to the recording in order for it to be recorded. And so, if you were to place calls from within the state of New Hampshire and not get permission from the other people on the call to record it, then he could be held like legally liable for, he could be sued, he could be prosecuted for that. And so he's not going to do that. In terms of service of like Omegle or Omni TV or whatever it's called, they're different. They do release the recordings are allowed to be made. I mean, it's kind of designed for that. So what he's doing is I think his original goal was to get onto Grindr, find a bunch of like degenerate people in his mind, not mine, of course, who are just looking to get laid, to get them on the phone, to get consent for them for him to record it, and then to just browbeat these people and just mock them in the same way that you saw him mocking people on Omni TV or on MeTV. Unfortunately for him, or I don't know, like it didn't quite work that way. It did not quite work out that way. What he found was that a whole lot of the people that he was running into who were willing to talk to him were much more interesting than he was going to give them credit for. We're going to play a clip in a minute, part of a 3.5-hour conversation that he had with one of the guys on this app. I feel a certain reticence to sort of talk in detail about this stuff without revealing a little something about myself. And that is that I do not talk about these issues on this podcast for various reasons, but I am, not straight, I don't know exactly how I identify these days. But I am also in an open marriage. I have a girlfriend, who lives out of town. If you were on the most recent Patreon live chat, I said my friend Emily stopped in. That is my girlfriend Emily. She's also the person I was talking about earlier about wanting to explain Benjamin Boyce to and just like completely failing to find a hook even for that conversation. I have been in threesomes. I have been in, et cetera, et cetera. This is not to brag, and it's certainly not to like talk too much. I'm not interested in, having deep conversations about this on this podcast. But Chris Cantwell does not understand in the slightest what the appeal of Grindr is. He doesn't understand anything about this world. And he's coming into it with an absolutely despicable agenda. And it's just terrible. It's horrifying that the initial goal was terrifying or horrifying. It's not terrifying really, but the things that he is doing here, I find as despicable as anything he's done, and he's done a lot of despicable shit. So in a minute, I'm going to play a little bit of a clip, a little bit of that long clip. But first, I wanted to let you see what Cantwell is like when he's not getting the kind of material that he wants out of one of these interviews, because he's conducted several of these interviews at this point.
You texted me, asked me if I wanted to be a part of this, and I did.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
I'm perfectly happy to work with all of your imperfections, buddy. It's the whole entire point.
No, you're not. You're not, because you use. Have you ever read The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene? How about The Pretty Laws of Power?
I've read both of those books.
Knew. I bet you have.
And you know where I read them? In prison.
Where?
Okay, so like I understand people like you better than you probably fucking think. Okay, and
but
so
you don't disrespect me. Listen. I'm up.
I'll disrespect you if I want. I'll disrespect you to your fucking face. Okay, like I'm a 220-pound, 6-foot fucking man.
I would kill you.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I would kill you, and I would go to prison willingly.
I'm sure your life is full of violent fantasies like that, but I'm just saying to you that if you and I were naked in a room, you'd do whatever I told you to because you're a fucking inferior subject to me. Okay, so just behave like one, and I'll help you.
I'm not inferior. You're inferior.
There's 100% fucking certainty that you're inferior to me, and I'm going to help you if you fucking let me.
That goes on for about 45 minutes.
That is probably the most deeply pitiful and pathetic thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I honestly, I do not know that I've ever heard anything that makes me more embarrassed on behalf of the person talking than that.
The person he's talking to is very clearly going through some kind of episode. There's very clearly some, so there's some issue. There's some, I don't know. I wouldn't hazard a guess. I don't know anything about this person. The only reason I'm playing, even the voice, is just to demonstrate and to, this person is anonymous to me. It was anonymous probably to Cantwell. I am doing everything I can to respect the rights of the people who have been victimized by Cantwell here. And so if that person does find this and reaches out to me, and the other clip, if either of these people find me and want their clips removed, I will remove them. I'll just say that out loud right now, because I do have the utmost respect, because these people have been victimized by Chris Cantwell.
Yes. Yes. We mean no ill to these people.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What is particularly despicable here is that Cantwell is getting access to these people. They are coming in and they are spilling their hearts to him. In many cases, they are talking about, I mean, we'll get into the details here, but what he's doing is he's going on Grindr and saying, like, I'm a podcast host, I'm a radio host, I run a podcast. I'm not going to tell you what it is because you're going to Google it, and then you're going to come in with preconceptions, and I don't want you to have preconceptions about who I am. I want to just like have a conversation and get to know you and get to hear your perspective on things.
I don't want you to have accurate knowledge.
I don't want you to know that you're talking to the crying Nazi who has very definite opinions about homosexuality that are incredibly negative. We're going to get to that in a minute as well.
I thought we might.
He plays up being sympathetic. You know, look, I believe that Chris Cantwell has known gay people in his life, in which he was probably perfectly okay with them being gay as long as they kept their gay stuff over there away from him. You know, I am 100% certain that that's true. He is a homophobe. He is a bigot. He is every bad thing that you can imagine. He is all of those things. He is all of those things. But he is a human being, and he recognizes other human beings. And he does, again, he has a 3.5-hour conversation with this other guy. And they have a good heart-to-heart. They talk in detail.
Yeah, by maybe about a month.
Oh, so this is all very recent for you, huh?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so the initial question was, how long have you been on Grindr? I just cut that little bit out of it.
Absolutely.
Are you gay?
But, well, that's an interesting question. I kind of prefer myself to consider myself bisexual.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily go as far as, you know, I get a little lost in swimming around all the different labels that we've come up with as a community or society or what have you. But I wouldn't go as far as to say I'm pansexual, but I just kind of, my viewpoint is I kind of see people for people, regardless of race, sex, or gender, or any of the above.
Well, I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that. I mean, if you're dressing up as a woman, it seems to me that you are pretty keenly aware of the differences between people, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying that I can appreciate, I don't have necessarily, so I can appreciate a black and white photo just as much as I could appreciate a color photo, or things that I'm still distinguishing the difference between, but I could still appreciate the beauty and what makes that individual unique. And I don't have a necessarily strong bias against that.
So I left in like a lot. Usually I trim these a little bit for the ums and ahs and the pauses and such. I wanted to give you a very accurate portrait of what this conversation is. Cantwell is coming in with an agenda. He wants to get certain bits of information out of this person. He wants to build a narrative around this person's life. And the answers he's getting are very heartfelt. Now, this guy has some bigoted opinions as well. I'm not gonna deny that. I'm not gonna brush over that. We're gonna get to that in a minute. But I think ultimately his heart is in the right place. He is not a Nazi. He did not deserve to be treated this way. He is I'm not going to give you a lot of details, but he is divorced. He is middle-aged. He is older than I am. He has had his first same-sex, sexual experience within the last year and a half or so. So he is new to this. He is coming at this as a middle-aged man. He talks in detail about like other relationships he's had outside of his marriage. He talks in detail about some of the sexual fetishes that he's into, and that he's experimented with people. And, he seems to be like a very, very ordinary person. And this is why I wanted to preface this with my experience. He is a very, very ordinary, normie person within, the gender and sexual minority community, if you want to give it that. Within swingers, within poly people, within the kink community, this guy is 100% bog standard normal. There is absolutely nothing that strikes me as in any way out of the ordinary from the conversation that he had, except that he's been preyed upon by Christopher fucking Cantwell.
Yeah.
In addition, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna spring this on you because this is what we're doing today. We're just springing stuff on Jack, apparently. I'm gonna show you
normal episode, folks. Normal episode.
I'm gonna show you the cover art that Cantwell decided to use when hosting this interview.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I expected.
Would you describe it to the audience?
It looks to me like an AI generated image of a woman's body, but the person in the image has a beard and a mustache and long blonde pigtails, in addition to having their female breasts very visible through sort of what looks like a kind of porn outfit.
Yes, it's very much like.
When you were getting ready to show it to me, I was thinking it's going to be, pardon me, everybody, it's going to be a bloke in a dress, because that's all these people have ever got. That's all these people have ever got. Oh, you're a bloke in a dress.
This is pretty vile, even by the bloke in a dress, concept. This is. If this was a real person, I would say, if this is the way you want to look, I have zero problem with gender bending and all that stuff. I have zero problem with any of that. To put this as this is. He's calling this guy a degenerate. He's saying with this image what he feels about these kinds of people, about the kinds of people who engage in this kind of activity. And I mean, I would go so far as to say that this looks like an AI generated art of if you said streetwalker or prostitute or whore with a bearded man's face. I guarantee you that was something like that was the prompt that he gave it. It's just nasty stuff. It's nasty, nasty stuff. And I'm taking that off of my screen now because I had to look at that too long when I was listening to the episode, and I'm not. Again, he's coming across, he's being very respectful, and he's being very I just want to hear your side of the story. I just want to get your side. And then what does he do with the episode? Oh, guess what the episode was titled? I didn't give you that detail yet. Sissy. He titles it Sissy.
Sissy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the conversation with this guy, it goes.
He's fucking scum.
Yeah, he is. So the conversation with this guy, the guy that goes on for 3.5 hours, it's actually split into two calls because the first half is very.
Can I just make sure I understand what's happening here? This individual who's talking to Cantwell, he is under the impression that he's having, or is supposed to be having, a serious conversation with somebody who is representing themselves as a radio journalist or something like that, who is sincerely interested in questions of somebody who's exploring their sexuality and stuff like that. And Cantwell is doing this. The aim here is to basically present this person to his audience as an amusing freak. That's what's happening here. Is that right?
That's effectively what's happening. So he does not produce intro and outro segments that mock this guy for his stuff. He has at least the veneer of empathy. He is at least he is not kind of going out there and going, look at the weirdo, look at the degenerate, look at the F slur. He's not going that far. He's building to a certain kind of political point is what he's doing. And that's kind of where I'm getting on this.
This is very reminiscent of Alex Jones does shit like this. Alex Jones does the dishonest interview. This is an old technique of Alex Jones's, where he talks to somebody who, I mean, less so now because he's more famous now than he used to be, but certainly back in the old days. I mean, if you listen to Knowledge Fight, you mentioned Knowledge Fight earlier. If people listen to Knowledge Fight, they know this. This is something Alex Jones has always done. Get somebody on the InfoWars who doesn't really understand who Alex Jones is, and subjects them to a dishonest interview where he works his own agenda while taking advantage of the person. Sorry, that's a byway, but it just reminded me powerfully. One absolutely despicable, cynical, lying shitbag is going to be quite like another, I suppose, just naturally.
Yep, very much so, very much so. So this conversation goes on in two parts. It's actually two separate calls that are stitched together. The first call is very much not politically focused. It's very personally focused, and just kind of like this guy's history and all the stuff I told you before. He calls back. He actually gets on the phone with him again. So he had a good enough experience to call back, first of all. And he said, like, yeah, I didn't really want to get into the politics originally, but I will, I know you're kind of a political guy and you were asking political questions, and I just wanted to kind of have more conversation around that topic. I mean, this is a guy, again, who is definitely seems to be feeling his way through these issues, like for the first time, is definitely not like thinking seriously. I mean, he's thinking seriously, but he's not educated on this stuff. He's just a normal person who has an interesting sex life, who is being preyed upon by Chris Cantwell. And again, we're going to get into like this is some, basically, he's bought into the groomer nonsense. He's bought into the, well, there's no such thing as a trans kid. It's just adults preying on trans. And you're allowing kids to medically transition at 5 because they just say they are, when we know that like children aren't allowed to make those kinds of decisions for themselves, yada, yada, yada. He's bought into that bullshit. And I don't think that's okay. But this isn't about this guy. This is about Cantwell.
I have friends that went through college. They're changing their major. They're 2 or 3 years into college. So I just don't know yet. I don't know. And we're talking about adults that could buy a firearm, vote, go to war, drive a car, make these, pay taxes, make decisions on a regular basis that do affect us as a collective, as a whole, and as a country, as a nation. But where are we at there? 16, 18, 21, right?
Right.
But we're letting children decide their...
I was banned from Grindr because I saw a woman on there who had every appearance of being female, who identified herself as a female-to-male transgender. And having spoken to 2 female-to-male transgenders whose lives were completely destroyed by testosterone, I said, hey, I just want to talk to you about this. I think that you're making a bad decision. You still have your femininity, like whatever it is that you want to do with your life, you still have this option. And I want to caution you against making permanent changes. And sure enough, she reported me to Grindr, and I was banned. And I didn't call her a name. I didn't use an epithet. All I tried to do is counsel her against doing this, right? Because the regime that pushes this stuff, like I said, they are none so pluralistic as they make themselves out to be. It's entirely one-way pluralism. They're saying that we're going to destroy this way of life, and you're going to either go along with it or we're going to destroy you.
And so you can kind of see where the politics is going, what he's using this for. He's not necessarily victimizing this one man, although he is, but he's using this content. He's using this to push to a hypothetical on his part, more mainstream audience. He's trying to get certain ideas out there regarding homosexuality, and regarding that even the gay people don't like this trans stuff, right? Even the gay people. And so this is like another, again, it's a lesser version of the gays against groomers stuff, right? It's just that again. But like using Chris's particular, shall we say, skill set, his particular mode of operation. That's the last clip I have of that gentleman, of that person. I hope you understand why I wanted to include that. I'm going to shift gears just for a second, and we're going to play what Cantwell's normal content around this issue is. This is not going to be Cantwell speaking for the most part. This is a man named Simon Roche. He is a South African man. He is part of the Sweetlanders Project. We don't have time to get into the details on that. He was in the United States in late 2023, and he stopped off first of all to do an episode of the Radical Agenda, and then he had such a great time with Cantwell that he came in and did a 4-hour secondary bonus that was released. It was released to the public. It wasn't released just to the paying members. Roche is vile. Roche is vile. He's a South African apartheid advocate. I mean, he's that guy. This organization, if you remember the Lawrence Southern documentary, about the South African farm murders, that's his pet issue. This is that group, like this little exact group. And so this is Simon Roche talking with the 100% approval of Cantwell. This is his opinion, and they start off talking about the church and like these sort of the American, like sort of the far right churches. They talk about like the Southern Baptist Convention, and the Southern Baptist Convention like loosened its requirements or its opinion on the existence of gay people in the church in the last couple of decades, and in particular in the last 10 years or so. This is how Roche and by extension Cantwell responds to that.
Along comes the Southern Baptist Convention, supposedly notoriously conservative, unwaverable in the holy doctrine of our Savior, saying, up the bum's okay. In that moment, I believe that many conservative Christians all around the world knew that they were not in a gray area. That no matter how many times the radio, the television, Donald Trump, God bless him, saying I've got no problem with gays, no matter who said, in fact, this is not as wrong as our forefathers have made it out to be, that they were able to conclude for themselves, bullshit. Do not equate the marriage of the sperm and the ova in creating new flesh in the womb of a woman with ejaculating into a poo canal.
Yeah.
I don't know much. I'm not clever enough, me. I don't know whether we should be nicer to Palestine, we should grant independence to the Peruvians, whether we should be shipping arms to Nicaragua, whether we should be the Labour Party, we should be voting Labour in Australia, or we should be voting Conservative, whether Jacinda Ardern. I'm too stupid, but I know that. I know I'm clever enough to know that. Don't try to convince me to tell my little boys, my beloved children, that that's okay and it's equal.
I want to, Simon does not have the benefit of headphones. And so it's worth the effect. But I want to let you know that there is some clipping there, and I think it actually serves to drive home your point of how seriously you take the issue.
None of that faux respect for gay people to live their lives. None of that, like, I know gay people, I've been around these people, they're okay if they're okay, etc. None of that phoniness comes out in that conversation, you notice. It's semen in a poo canal. That's what Cantwell actually thinks of gay people. That's what Cantwell actually believes. And you notice that his response to this outburst on Roche's part is to, the audience, we might have blown your speakers out a little bit there. So, yeah, sorry about that. The technical limitations, et cetera, et cetera. And they just go on and they continue on with the conversation as if that is perfectly fine.
Actually, the clipping brings it home how powerful. It was a very powerful speech you just made, and the clipping only makes it more powerful, I think.
Yeah. So, again, not that anyone listening this far into this podcast would have any doubt as to how Cantwell feels. And I could have very easily found there are worse clips. There are clips of Cantwell saying things that are just disgusting, that are just absolutely vile on this issue. Maybe I'll put it up as bonus content. People keep wanting the darker version of this podcast on the live chats I do. We did get requests of like, no, we want the dark version. It's like, you really don't want the dark version, I promise you. But maybe we'll do something like that for a bonus material one day. Just really terrible clips of Cantwell saying things about gay people. So yeah, I don't know. We're getting to wrap up here. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm beating this dead horse a little bit, but I think it's important to have that context.
That's what we do here, Daniel.
Yeah.
We beat dead horses.
We do. Hey, did you know that the crying Nazi is racist? Let's explain all the different ways he's been racist recently. Right? No, I agree. But yeah, no. Do you have any other comment before we kind of play the last clip and wrap up here?
I hesitate to say this because this is all kinds of problematic. And people might, I don't know, I might get in trouble for this, might get cancelled by the woke mob who want to destroy free speech, obviously. And that just destroys your life, that's what these people want. Like when you're on an app, and you start harassing people and they throw you off the app, that's what that is. That's destroying your life. But no, people might take this for a joke, and it's kind of a joke, but it's also, I'm kind of serious. This guy, he's going on Grindr, and he's talking to people like, "Oh, if we were in a room together, I could dominate you." And he's creating AI images of like female sex workers with men's faces, beards, and shit. Chris, sweetie, honey, I don't know. You might want to give some thought to this. You might want to, obviously self-examination is not your thing, clearly. But maybe give it a try one day, maybe actually give some thought to who you are and how you feel about stuff. And I don't know, it's just possible that you might come to some realizations. And if you could just, I don't know, if you could just get in touch with your real feelings a little bit more closely, you might actually be happier. And maybe other people would be happier too. I don't know.
Especially,
I'm not a psychoanalyst. I'm not a psychologist. I can't, I don't know. But he's got some cards he's not showing us. That's what I think. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
What the fuck?
So I'm gonna just jump ahead on this. I am gonna play the last clip, I think, but like I think it's worth you gave me the perfect end for this. So Cantwell in the Nazi community, in the online Nazi community since 2018 and since the Bowl Patrol bullshit, he has had a reputation of such because he is known to have willingly injected methamphetamine into his ass, for instance, into his actual butthole.
We have actually talked at length about Christopher Cantwell putting things into his ass on this show before. So,
and there are photos of him.
This is the podcast that I do with you, Daniel. This is your podcast that I do with you for you.
This is kind of our job. This is a part-time job for me. It's knowing this stuff. Oh my God. Go around with that realization in your life. But yeah, no. There are photos of him circulating on the internet where he's like pleasuring himself with like a pocket pussy and like a vibrating cock ring and that sort of thing. And so he has this sort of very not great reputation among certain parts of the Nazi right, because of that.
Whereas these are, objectively, these are the best things about him.
No, like, yeah, I mean, hey, you want to get off with some sex toys? Hey, yeah, that is fine with me. You're sending it to, if you've got a consenting partner who wants to see that, like, believe me, I've seen it all. I've seen worse. It's fine. But it turns out that Cantwell has been kicked off of Grindr more than once under multiple accounts. Partly because he's been using like an ID spoofing, like an IP spoofing software to generate false locations so that he can like talk to people in different areas, which is a no-no for the site.
Yeah.
Partly because he's been abusive to people and been reported to people on the app. Running into issues on his Telegram, he put out the following request. I don't want to use the system to harass people. I go out of my way to be polite, and the substance of most talks takes place off-platform. But if I had an abundance of accounts, I could afford to take more risks and run more accounts simultaneously to obtain a greater number and quality of interview subjects. So I'm soliciting your help. If you would be willing to install the app and register an account to be verified via SMS to your cell phone, DM me, and I'll give you an email address and password to use for the registration. You should not use a VPN for registration since it sometimes causes an error requiring intervention of their customer service. Once you've completed the registration, you can delete the app, and the account will be associated with the email address I provide, so you won't be getting spammed for AIDS medication. Chris Cantwell is trying to get his most devoted followers on Telegram to dox themselves to him so that he can look at more penises on Grindr.
Huh.
That's what's happening. That's literally what's happening. He wants to spend more time on Grindr, and he's trying to get his audience, his followers, to give them their information so that he can spoof their IP address, and so that he can continue to make more accounts, so he can spend more time on Grindr. Yeah. That's it's just you're not dodging that reputation this way, buddy. Like it's like, oh yeah, you get blocked from one account. Okay, fine. I'll just go and find some other thing. He's way into getting into Grindr, and
he wants in, doesn't he? He wants to be in Grindr, definitely.
I am.
He wants to be in all the different ways in that he can get into Grindr. He wants in.
He's very interested. Yes. Again, I don't think anyone would reasonably interpret what we are doing here as homophobic. It is obviously I have experience with these matters, and again, zero criticism of anybody using any app of this kind for their sexual gratification or their emotional gratification.
Absolutely.
But Cantwell is on another fucking planet, man. All right.
If only he were.
If only he were, yes. All right. Big wrap up here. Where is this all leading? Reparative therapy. He's trying to justify reparative therapy. That is turning gay people into straight people effectively. And normalizing that. This is Cantwell. This is Cantwell's empathy you're about to hear. He considers this to be an incredibly empathetic thing that he's saying. This is a long clip, but I think it's worth it.
I think one of the most intriguing facts about it is the realization that the female to male transgender community, within that demographic, there's women who were lesbians who did this for whatever reason, and then after they start taking testosterone, they start to develop a sexual appetite for male attention. Now, you can look at that a few ways. One of them is, they're unchangeably homosexual, and if you start exposing them to male hormones, then the exposure to male hormones makes them want same-sex contact with males. Another is that homosexuality is a treatable condition. And oh boy, you say homosexuality is a treatable condition, you're going to get in a lot of trouble with a lot of people, right? You're going to be, hey, wait, you're saying gay people are sick? Well, I'm actually saying that, in this case, it sort of helps to be a Darwinist, as a matter of fact. If you lack the drive to reproduce, then as a Darwinist, I can only view that as an affliction. And if you were in any other situation like that, then you would go to a doctor and you would say, hey, doctor, I can't get an erection in the presence of a woman. I can't, I've been trying to impregnate my wife. We're making love every night and we're not conceiving. And in either of those cases, the highest paid and most capable people of our species will rush to the assistance of that couple and try to help them conceive. They'll give them medications. They'll surgically intervene if they have to. They'll do anything it takes to help that couple have a child. If the same man goes with the same penis to the same doctor and says, Doc, this penis will only get erect for men, the doctor will congratulate him on his modernity, and if he dares to demand treatment, he will be refused that treatment. And he'll be scolded for his sinful thinking. He'll be sent to a therapist who will demand generous payment from him or the taxpayer, he doesn't care where it comes from, to tell him that it's great what he's involved in. And that he just needs to get over it. But if you talk to these people long enough, a lot of them will tell you, that if they could change it, they would. And the people who prevent them from having access to those options are not looking out for them. It's a malicious thing to do to them. Forget about what they're doing to civilization. The people that they claim to be advocating for, they're hurting them. They're denying the medical treatment. And I'm offended by that. I honestly am.
Kind of the serious version of what I was saying before is that this guy has infantile sexuality. This is what it sounds like. He sounds like a little child talking about willies and fannies the way little kids do, curious little kids who would just. That's what he sounds like. He sounds like like a child that's just learning about the bits and pieces that people have and the things that people do and is obsessed with it and is just talking about it. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like infantile, childish obsession. And it's pathetic. It's absolutely fucking pathetic. This guy, what business is any of this of yours? Why are you so fucking obsessed with other people's genitals and what they do with them to the point where you have to go on and on and on spouting this ludicrous fucking squalid ignorance that you dress up as I say, well, this is why it helps to be a Darwinist, because you can't you're dressing this up as science. You don't know the first fucking thing about any of this. You obviously you won't listen to any of the people that actually do know, the people that actually do the science and research this stuff. You just want to talk about other people's genitals and what you imagine they do with them and how to you that feels like a civilizational threat. This is so fucking contemptible and pathetic.
100% agreed. He does run into people in these conversations sometimes who are even people who have called into his show who didn't know anything about him or just called in. He has spoken to queer people. He has spoken to even like there was like a teenager who was possibly non-binary or trans. And he has like spoken to these people, and the moment that he finds that out, he is immediately the worst possible stereotypes and the worst possible like version of this. He does have like, this is a man with the internet. This is a man with internet access. This is a man who can like find things out for himself. He can read things. He is literate. He is not dumb. He is capable of like reading complicated things. He doesn't understand them often because he's not a genius, but like he could know more than this if he could just remove the thing in his heart, the thing in his brain that just can't get over this issue. He could understand this so much more. There was a real conversation to be had with that gentleman that he had 3.5 hour conversation with. There was a real person there with a really varied experience who could have taught you so much about the world, but instead he turns it into a fast track to the worst bigotry towards gay people imaginable. I mean, we're literally talking about the elimination of gay people. That's what reparative therapy is.
Oh, yeah.
It's the elimination of gay people. It's not giving people the option. It's forcing people into this option because fertility rates or whatever. It is absolutely vile stuff. This is who Cantwell is. This is why we put so much energy into him. Yes, he's entertaining. He's entertaining to kick around. He is actively harming people in the real world on Grindr. He is actively approaching that user base with malicious intent. And if you or somebody you love or know is on that app, I hope that they are made aware of that fact. So if they hear this Peter Griffin-ass voice asking questions and wanting them to come on a podcast, they know exactly who the fuck this guy is. That's why we're doing this episode.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hope so. I hope, maybe this helps. And yeah, we kick him around. We have fun taking the piss out of him. That's not, it might not sound like it, but that's not something that I do lightly. Like I detest bullying. I hate it. I have occasion, at moments in my life, I've been guilty of it towards other people, as I suppose most of us have in one way or another at one time or another. Those are some of the memories that I'm most ashamed of and most apologetic for. I hate it. I don't lightly do this. I don't lightly make somebody a laughing stock and take the piss out of them and publicly insult them. The reason we do this is not because this guy is fun to pick on. The reason we do this is because this guy, as ludicrous and pathetic and ridiculous and laughable as he is poison. That's what this stuff is. As you said, reparative therapy. This is genocidal bigotry. It's inherently eliminationist bigotry, and he's out there preying on people.
I don't think we can sum it up any better than that. There will certainly be more Cantwell episodes in the future, but hopefully we can take a little bit of a break from him. This was kind of I realized what he was doing and knew we had to prep this one quickly, so I prepped this over the course of just a few days, really. And it's not fun. It's not fun, but that's all I got for you today.
Well, I think that's enough. I think that'll do it.
That's enough. Yes.
It's a lot, as the kids say. Yeah. So thanks for that, Daniel. That was as fascinating as it was just dispiriting. I'm not sure what to do. I kind of want to go and burn down the world completely. But instead I probably just do something fun to take my mind off it, to wash the filth that is Cantwell out of my brain. And listeners, I think you deserve to do the same thing too. So go and do that. But thanks for listening to us first. Thanks for polluting your grey matter with the reports that Daniel brings you. Watch out for more episodes from us in the future. Public bonuses, maybe news briefs, and mainline episodes. They will be coming. I know we've been a bit fallow lately, but they will be coming. In the meantime, you know where we are, and you know what to do. And go and do it. And that's I Don't Speak German. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
That was I Don't Speak German. Thanks for listening. Follow us in all the places you usually follow podcasts. For now, at least, we're both still on Twitter. I'm @_Jack_Graham_, and Daniel is @Daniel E. Harper. And the show's Twitter is @IDSGpod. If you want to help us do the work we do, and gain a few benefits along the way, we both have Patreons. And our theme music is by Loon the Band.